Good morning and welcome to Youth Sunday School. Here on the 13th of December, we continue talking about the birth of Jesus. Now, last week we talked about Zechariah and John the Baptist, and we talked about sort of the lead-in of Mary and the angel. Today I wanted to talk about the actual Christmas story because then afterwards we'll talk about how it is, what happens after sort of the Christmas story and the birth of Jesus with um, the wise men and all that stuff. Jesus going to the temple and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that next week as we get real close to Christmas. But today we're going to talk about the birth of story as we traditionally read it, which is Luke chapter 2. And it goes all the way verses 1 through 20. And so that's where they have the decree and they have to go to be registered in Nazareth. And then Mary goes with them. You got Joseph. They're on a donkey. It's not very exciting. Not a very good trip. And while they're there, they have to. Jesus is born, and there's no place for them, so they have to lay him in a manger. And then you have shepherds. They're in the field. Angels show up, saying amazing things as angels do, apparently. And then they tell them what it's going to be when they find baby Jesus. It's going to look like this. He's going to be wrapped. He's going to be in a manger. And then the shepherds are like, we got to go see it. And so the shepherds go, and then they tell Mary what they've been told. She treasures it in her heart, we're told, and they return glorifying and praising God for all that they have seen. So this is Luke. This is the big one. This is the one we traditionally read on Christmas Eve. It's the story we're most familiar with, and most of the details within it are the ones that we think of when we think Christmas. So a couple interesting things to point out here. Excuse me. The first one is that so they have to go to be part of the census. Why does it matter that the census is included in our scripture? That's, I think, a question for us to ask. So the reason that it matters to us that the census is included in the scripture is because the author of Luke is trying to establish evidence for us as a reader that these things all happened. So he uses the census as a baseline to say, here's a historical event that we all know happened that you can use to reference when I'm talking about and what I'm talking about. So the reason that things like that are included is because it helps us as the reader have authenticity with the story. So that's why you have the whole census thing. The other thing in the first 8 verses is the idea of this no room in the inn. So traditionally we think of this as like they went to a Comfort Inn and Suites or a Super 8 or Residence Inn, any hotel. And they were not able to get a place to stay in the hotel because there wasn't room in the hotel. But that doesn't actually fit the original Greek. That doesn't actually fit the way that things worked in that part of the world. So the image we have is that Jesus is born in like a barn by himself with his family. I mean, Mary, Joseph, but they're in a barn. They're out by themselves. And that's not really what happens. What really happens is that they go to Bethlehem, and Joseph would be able to show up to any family member that he has and say, I am Joseph, son of, recite his whole lineage. And they would basically say, welcome, come on in, stay with us. And so what it's telling us is that in the household in this area of Palestine, you'd have your main space, and then you'd have a separate space that's like reserved for guests and things. And so that's what we're being told is that basically he shows up, they're kind of late, there is nowhere to stay that's like their own space. So they're with the family. And in Palestine, the animals would stay inside to keep warm so that they would be safe. So you would have in your family house, you would have a manger and stuff, of a trough of hay where they would eat and sleep. in your house. That was just part of the way your house was structured. And so they show up and they need somewhere to stay, and there's no like their own space for them. They unfortunately have to stay with the animals and everybody in the hustle and bustle of the house. And they'd want their own space. She's pregnant. They know she's going to give birth soon. She might even be in labor by this point. And so there she is in the middle of all these people that she does not know, let alone, I don't think Joseph probably knows any of them. Maybe he's heard a story about a couple of them. And she's in labor. So she's surrounded by people she does not know. And in the midst of their busy lives with everything going on, they have this woman who's giving birth. And it's just pure chaos. And so Jesus comes into the middle of our lives in unexpected ways. And he breaks in and he's like, I'm here. And so that's what happens is Jesus shows up unexpectedly into the middle of the hustle and bustle of life. There's a theme there, isn't it? So the reason that Jesus is laid in a manger is because that's probably the only spot they had that was soft enough to put a baby. So that's why he ends up in the straw. And then finally we have the angels, and the reason that it's important again that they go and they say, I was told by the angels this, or the shepherds. The reason that it's important that the shepherds go and say the angels told me this, and then turn around and go back praising God for everything was just as they had been told, is that again, as a reader and an early Christian, it establishes credibility to our case. So everything here is to give us credibility. So you have an outside person, not related, who is a witness to what is happening with the birth, and who is told by divine intercession, and then who finds everything just as they were told. And so that's, again, you've got strangers coming back into the scene of the hustle and bustle of life, saying, we heard there's a king born. So if you're the family, you're probably freaking out at this point. And then they go back. So they're the first ones to share the good news. And that's the birth story of Jesus. And you'll notice that in the midst of that, there is no wise men, as we think of with Christmas Eve. There's no 3 wise men. There's no magi. There's no camels, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, because they're not here yet. We'll talk about that next week, but they don't show up until later. The tradition of the wise man, they don't show up until after Jesus is born, and older. And we'll talk about that next week. So I hope that helps you somewhat. Again, if you have questions, if you want to pitch them to me, reach out to me via email, text me, or those are the 2 easiest, email or text me. You can call me if you would like, and I'm happy to answer those, and I can tag those in a video or just respond straight to you. So hopefully you have a great day and stay safe.